lot of people.
Good morning, everybody. I know you can't respond because we have a lot of people on the call this morning. We have about more than 50 people RSVP'd for this webinar. So we're just going to give it another minute. We're going to get started at 11:03, just while people continue to filter in. But it's great to see so many familiar names here.
Heard you say there's a lot of familiar faces on.
Okay, we're just about there. People will continue to filter in. This session will be recorded, and we'll be happy to share it to anybody that would like to filter it out to other team members. We'd just like to keep it on the side for future reference. But hey, we're really excited to get rolling on this complimentary accounts payable training session in Spire. So we know that some people have access to the system today, some people don't. That's perfectly okay. I also want to just bring up that, we might you might see other things that you're interested in that are not related to accounts payable. We're certainly more than happy to arrange any kind of one-on-one calls to go into more detail on anything that maybe you saw, but we didn't go into a lot of detail on. Brian and I, Wendy and I, Eddie and I, we've all been out in the field a lot and just getting on a lot of webinars with customers and frankly, having a lot of fun showing the new system. So with that said, let's go ahead and get rolling. Hey, Brian, you're good. You can see my PowerPoint deck, yes? All right, excellent. Yes. So just a couple of little housekeeping notes before we get rolling. I already mentioned it, but we have quite a few people here, so I don't think that we would be able to get through it if people weren't muted, but it's not because we don't like talking to you. We're happy to do that after this, but just for the sake of an efficient webinar, the attendees are going to be muted throughout the session. At the same time, we do fully encourage you to post questions. There's this little Q&A icon that you'll see, and we fully encourage you to ask questions along the way. Wendy, Brian, myself, and Jesse will do our best to get to those questions either in real time or we can save some of them until the end. And then lastly, once Jesse starts to share his screen, it might look a little bit too small for people. So one of the things that you're able to do to make it look bigger is that there's an icon that looks like this within Microsoft Teams, and it says pop out. If you click on that, you'll be able to make it full screen so that you're just able to utilize all the real estate on your monitor. So with that said, let's just kind of quickly go through the agenda. We're going to do some vendor management. Jesse's going to create some vouchers. There's a lot of different ways to create vouchers, both manually. We can import them. We can create them through Rapid Pay. He's going to go ahead and pay vouchers in a variety of different ways. Again, manually. He's going to talk about e-payments, and then we're also going to go through some invoice allocation, which could be a really useful feature for those of you that either are not aware of it but do have a use for it. Could really save a lot of time. We're going to void checks. We're going to reclass some vouchers. We're going to go through reports and exports, and then we're going to wrap it up with AP, EOM, and then questions and answers. So with that said, Jesse, I'd like to turn it over to you. And if you
All
could
right.
share your screen, where are I'm not, I don't see you there, but I think I hear you.
I'm somewhere. I don't know where I am. I mean, I know where I am, but I don't know where I am on the screen.
There you are.
on the
All right, great. Hey,
presentation.
Jesse.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, so you should all be able to see my Spire screen at this point. So like Adam said, we're really going to be focusing on accounts payable or AP today. But before I go to AP, I'll just take a minute just to give you your bearings. So right after you log into Spire, you're going to be looking at a list of all your buildings, just like in Explorer. We're not going to go through that, but you can like click on a building, see all the tenants, things like that. But if you expand this menu over here, then you'll see all your different menu options. So you have the resident management screens, accounts payable, which we're going to be talking about. Lots of different general ledger screens, got your cash receipts, legal, work orders, tasks and notes, reports, imports, and all these other things you see here. But again, today we're going to be focusing on accounts payable. So that's where we're going to start off. So I'm just going to click on query vouchers. Just close the menu. And query vouchers is a screen that I'm sure you are all using in Explorer. It's a way to search your invoices, really. So we're going to use this in a second, but before I do that, I'm just going to point out the accounts payable search bar. So this is something that you might not be using because you might not know about it if you are in Spire, but I'm going to teach you about it now. So what you could do over here is a few different things. You could just type in an invoice number, and it'll bring up that invoice number for you. You could also type in a vendor, and then you have a few options. You could view their open vouchers, or you could go right to their vendor file. And we'll talk more about the vendor file momentarily. Or again, you can view their open vouchers. Get right to a list of the open vouchers. So that's just a quick way to do some things that perhaps take a few more steps nowadays. But what I want to do is focus on this query vouchers on the filters over here. So if you click on filters, you could use your filters to find what you're looking for. So basically, let me just start off in the default state, which is this. Let's just say I just want to see everything that's open. So that's easy. Just hit open. And here's all of our open vouchers. You can see it took really no time at all to bring up, 6,200 open vouchers. So the queries are very fast. Maybe we want to just see everything that we've ever paid. So here's all the vouchers we've ever paid. But perhaps you want to be a little more specific. So everything we ever paid to this particular vendor, for example. And then you could do maybe between a certain range of dates for certain GL accounts. So maybe only like my plumbing expense, or we could search every voucher for all my different plumbing expenses. That's another example. You could search by who entered it, by the types of vouchers, by when it was entered, things like that. But again, for now, I'm just going to do everything that we paid to this one particular vendor. And there it is. So now that we're looking at a list of our vouchers, there's certain things that we could do. So for example, we have the file attachment column over here, and you could view your file attachment. You could also drag and drop images right onto this grid of vouchers. I'm going to switch back to open. Clear this vendor. So I'm looking at all my open vouchers. So yeah, we could drag and drop images right onto this table. You could also do it from the detail screen, which I'll show you. Also, if you're using rapid file imaging, that's the system with the barcodes. When you print out a barcode and you put it on the invoice and then you scan it in, and it links it automatically to the voucher record. Those attachments will all be in Spire. So all your attachments that are in Explorer and everything, no matter how they got in there, they'll all show up here. That's true for any data, really. Again, so we're looking at a list of all of our open vouchers. And before we drill into one and see what we can do in there's a few things I want to show you on this screen. We can click on Show GL Account Distributions. And what that's going to do is, so no longer will I have a row for each voucher, but I'll have a row for each GL account that was on the voucher. So now we're broken out into more detail. Maybe I want to see that kind of information in aggregate. So I could click on Show GL Account Total Distributions, and then we'll just wait for these totals to come up. And so per company that came up in my query, here are how everything is broken out amongst the GL accounts. So it's kind of like, doing reporting from here in a way, depending on what you want to report on. Also, you could export all these views. So whatever custom view you build, then you could just export all the data to Excel.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a
PDF.
really important point just to kind of accentuate a little bit. And also, Jesse, if you could just actually export it, because I want people to see how pretty it looks and also how fast it exports. Like it really doesn't take any time at all. As soon as he presses go, it was done before. I mean, we didn't even see it really happen. So we've taken pains to make sure that this stuff, when it does export, it's in a really, really easily workable format. So even though you still have access, and Jesse will show you this later, to every single report that you do in Explorer converts over, this is in a lot of ways an ad hoc reporting tool. In fact, this is what a lot of our competitors would call their reports for this sort of a thing. We kind of differentiate between the two. We're looking at building these ad hoc lists and exporting them as exports, but then we still have the kind of ready for prime time to be sent out in consistent formats to different boards and things like that coming out of the report generator, so that you always know exactly what you're going to get in a consistent format. But these exports are a big deal, and they're available all throughout the system.
Okay. So again, you can interact with your file attachments right from the grid, see them, attach them. But I'm going to click on a voucher, and we're going to get to the detail. So now we're looking at an open voucher. Another word for that is open invoice. And I had just queried for all my open vouchers. So I do have a quick way now to jump between all those records that came up in the query. So here's my whole list. It's like a little query vouchers pop-up screen, and then I could just jump around to whatever voucher I want. And we can quickly glance over these fields, but it's all the same voucher fields that you're used to in Explorer. There's a few things I want to point out over here. So first of all, let's say this is a voucher, you just want to print the check. So for those of you that are familiar with Explorer, to print a check on a voucher, you select it for payment, process that batch, print the check, and process that batch. But it's a little bit more efficient now. You could just click on print check, and it's going to do all that behind the scenes for you. So this is really good if you just have like a one-off check you want to print. Selecting voucher payment is still very valuable because it allows you to do things in bulk. But I just have the vendors standing right in front of me. All right, I'll print it right now. So just click print check. No stress over select voucher payment, process the batch, and all that stuff. So let's just let this go. I don't have my printer installed, it seems, but yes, that would print out your check.
And it's done.
Another thing
it's done.
Right.
That's it.
Another thing you could do similarly is convert it to a hand check. So, let's say you made the payment, but you didn't print the check out of MDS. So that would be a hand check. So maybe that's not literally a hand check, but maybe you did an online transfer, or maybe you literally did write a hand check, or you did some sort of payment that wasn't a printed check. So then you can convert it into a hand check right from here. There's also a dedicated hand check screen. So like you could just add it initially as a hand check also if you want, which we'll talk about momentarily. Could also print your barcode from here, and that's for users of rapid file imaging, which I talked a little bit about before. But if you needed a barcode for this voucher, you could print it out and stick it on there and then scan it in later. Similarly, when you add a voucher, you could be in a mode where it automatically prints your barcode for you right after you add the voucher, which I'm going to be adding vouchers momentarily as well. Actually, that is what I'm going to jump to right now. So now I'm going to click on New Voucher. So this is where we add a voucher, or, another word for that, again, is invoice. So we're going to add a voucher right now, pick the company, or you could allocate to multiple companies, which I'm going to show you that as well. But I'm just going to tab through, pick your vendor. You could search by the code if you know the code, but more likely you know the name. So that just type in the name and you'll find it. Fill in the amounts, invoice number if you have one. Put any notes that you want. Allocate it to your GL accounts. So when you are doing this, you could search by your accounts.
By the
however
name
you
of
want
the
to search.
account.
Yeah, and then you also have this nice little label over here to show you the type of account. So let's say you had like a rental income and a rental expense. If you search for rent, they're all going to come up, but at least you can make a much more educated decision on which one to use. You're probably not going to use an asset or an income. You're probably going to grab a expense, but it's up to you. But this will help you make that decision a lot easier. When you're adding a voucher, you could, if you want, link it to an occupant, and that allows you to do certain things. such as add chargeback information. So maybe it's you want to charge them back for this invoice. Maybe it's a co-op condo or whatever reason you want to charge them back. So you could add the chargeback information in here, and then there's a whole process, which I'm not going to get into right now, but where you could print the chargeback letter out, send it off to them, and then actually charges the tenant, puts a charge on the record, and links it to the voucher. You could add equipment. So let's say this voucher is because we're buying a new fridge for the unit or something, and you want to keep a record of that fridge on file. So you can click add equipment and then fill in all the details. Also, if
Hey,
you can link
Jesse,
it to
can that equipment, would that be linked to the annual rent registration if you're collecting additional rent?
yeah, if the equipment codes are set up in such a way that it's supposed to do that, then it would feed into your rent registrations. That's right.
So I thought it might.
Yeah, I thought that too. Okay. If there's any work orders on file, you could link it to a work order. Also, if the vendor is an attorney, then there'll be another box here linked to legal case, and you could pick any legal case. So what that allows you to do is then when you could easily pull up a list of all the vouchers applicable to a certain legal case. But anyway, for now, I'm going to click on save. And this is what I was talking about before, where you could print a barcode when you save the voucher. So now we have an open voucher, and I can keep adding vouchers if I want. Just a little thing about that. Maybe I have a whole pile of vouchers for this particular company, so now I can just tab right through it. Same with the vendor, and you leave it blank, and it uses what you used last time. So it's just a little efficiency trick. All right, so I talked about how to add a voucher for a particular company. So now I'll show you invoice allocation, or meaning add one voucher, but it'll split it across multiple companies, or really multiple it'll pay it out of multiple bank accounts.
And I'm just going to pause there just for a second in terms of the use case. So sometimes, well, I usually use the MDS software bill as an example. Actually, that's one that that's an expense that you might want to say, okay, we have 10 buildings. Each one of them should pay 10% of that bill, but we don't want to enter it 10 times. In fact, we don't even want to have to do the math to figure out what 10% is not that hard, but what 10% or 11% or 3% or whatever, like some weird allocation table might look like. Instead, you have that allocation table saved in the background, and you say, okay, anytime I get this bill or that bill, I want to apply this allocation table to it so that it chops it up and shares that cost across multiple companies in whatever percentage form I've decided, right? So it's going to prevent you from having to do the math and then enter it however many companies you have in that template numbers of times. So it could be a really big time saver for those of you that have the use case.
Yes, like here's my example. We get an invoice from the landscaper, and he bills us for all the properties at once. So we're gonna, or at least these three. So I pick that template, and now I'm just gonna proceed with entering my invoice like normal. It's $1,000. And you could either use the percentages that are defined by the template, whatever those happen to be. You don't have to think about it, or you could also go into fixed amount mode where you just manually allocate. So that's $1,000, and you just manually want to say how much each bank account's going to pay. But for now, I'm just going to hit process, and now it's going to create a voucher for each one of those companies based on the templates that I had set up. And then from there, you could select them for payment and finish off the process. Speaking of selecting vouchers for payment, that's where we're going to move on to now. So I'm going back to accounts payable and then select vouchers for payment. So again, this is where you go to pick one or more vouchers that you are ready to pay. And again, if it is literally one voucher, you could just pull up the voucher and click print check. But for now, we're going to do things in bulk. So I'll just hit apply filter and see all the open vouchers in my system. So these are all the open vouchers that meet the criteria that I just was searching for, but maybe you just want to deal with one particular company. For example, or one vendor, multiple companies, all companies, two vendors, whatever combination of things you want to, however you want to search
due
for.
date, right? Due date's a good one. Discount date is another good one.
But again, here's all. So then once you have all, you could also then just sort. So now we're, sorted logically some way. So probably could find what you're looking for somewhat easily. And then whichever vouchers you want to pay, you have to get down to this bottom section. So we're just going to add them. So I'm doing one at a time, but you could also do ranges and add all 6 at once. Also, all the same business logic that's in Explored is automatically in Spire. So like if you have rules for insurance set up, they have to have active insurance. It's going to warn you, or there's other rules too. Can't think of
It
them
is
all right
worth
now.
just talking about the insurance just for a moment, because we have a wide range of, knowledge levels on this call, I think. But, when we're going through the vendor file in real deep detail for people that have never seen it before, usually the insurance could be of significance to people, right? So that's if you require a vendor to have insurance on file, right? There's a place to add that information onto the vendor's file, right? And then depending on what rules you have set up in the system can either completely prevent you from paying that vendor if their insurance has lapsed, so that now you need to go out, get the new insurance, put it onto the vendor file, and now you could start paying them again. Or it could just stop you and warn you that the insurance is expired. Or it could do nothing, depending on whether or not you're interacting with that portion of the system. But we could certainly answer more detailed questions about that if anybody wants to set that up. It's not hard. It's probably a 5-minute phone call, and we'd be happy to get you rolling on that.
All right, so here I am again in cash in select voucher payment, but I just want to talk about this cash position option. So as we're going through these vouchers, we could have this cash position sidebar open, and we could see for company 456, here's our cash position. We find one that maybe has some money. Let's see. Well, we're all in the red on a lot of these, but that's besides the point. So here's our current balance of processed transactions in the general ledger. Any money that's sitting in as our cash receipt that we haven't posted yet, any cash disbursements or checks that we have sitting in the system in a batch that we haven't posted yet, and then this is the total of all that. So now you can have a pretty good idea of how much money, how much you could afford to pay, and whether or not you want to pay things. But anyway, so a few more things you could do on here. You can make partial payments. You can declare a certain voucher as a separate check. And then finally, you would process your batch. And then from there, your checks would automatically either just print or feed into a print check / cash disbursements batch. It follows the same flow that you have in Explorer. So the system can be set up again in one of two ways. You process your select vouchers payment batch, your checks, it'll pop up and say, pick your check printer and you print them. And then do you want to process that batch? Say yes, and you're done. The other option would be that you process just this batch and then it goes into a queue for someone else to pick up. It could be you, but someone else to go into the print check screen to print all these checks out actually and finish it off.
And really what we're talking about here is, depending on your office, like sometimes it doesn't, for security purposes, right? For best practices, from an accounting standpoint, the person that enters the invoices for security reasons might not be the same person that prints the checks, right? So that, that's just one other way of separating the division of labor, so that you're adding a level of security there. But not everybody operates that way. We can configure the system either way, but it's better to have it there if you need it and be able to kind of like make it go away than not have the option at all of bifurcating those responsibilities.
You could also, so like we were just talking about, if you did not finish off the process from here because maybe you don't have permissions to or whatever reason, then it feeds into this print checks and e-payment screen, and this is where you would finish off the process. So you could open up the batch and print the checks. Let's see what's in this one. And it's also where you could process your batches from. So I'm not going to go into any batches right now, but this is where you could see all the checks that are in the batch and print them, finish it off.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about e-payments at the very end, but essentially once you've approved everything and you've gotten it down to this level, you have the option to either print checks, or if you have it turned on, to make electronic payments instead and just totally farm that out instead of having to deal with anything in the office on your own.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about that in a little more detail when you're ready. But let's keep moving on. A second. All right, we also have, not too exciting, but let's talk about voiding checks. So if you need to void a check, first find the check that you want to void. Get lucky here. So here's all the checks that meet that criteria, then you find the one that you want to void, you click on it, and then it'll give you a little form to fill out, and then just hit void check, and then the check's voided. So it's a similar process to Explorer, just probably a little easier to figure out if you've never seen it before.
It's a little, I'd say it's cleaner. We didn't want it. There was very little that we just totally directly 100% translated one for one, because we wanted to tweak things and make things better really anywhere that we could. So if you understand the process in Explorer, you'll still understand it here. But if you had to train somebody from scratch on one system or the other, I'd say it's probably easier in Spire if you're fresh off the street and you've never used either system. It's a pretty fair statement.
Yeah, here's an example of something we didn't just transfer over as is. So if you click on vendors, now you have this nice little, you could build out a list of vendors. So I just want to see all my vendors, for example. So here's all my vendors. So simple, but it's, nice to be able to do that. You could, in Explorer, you could run a vendor directory report. You could do that in here as well, but this is just if you want to just query for a list of vendors, maybe all your vendors that are set up for 1099s, or all your vendors that, we have set up for, I always go to plumbing, that are set up for plumbing, or however you want to find your list of vendors.
And then once you've built that list, you can export it if you want to, and in like less than a second.
And then here's the vendor file itself. If you wanted to edit any field, this is pretty much how it works, any form in Spire, but you just click into it and change it. And then that edits it. If you wanted to add a vendor, click add vendor, and then pretty much just fill in the blanks. So it's all the same fields that you're used to in Explorer, just laid out cleaner, I would say. And we're not going to go through the whole process because you literally just fill in the blanks and hit finish. Just a few things left on here before I hand it over back to Adam. You can import vouchers. So if you go to imports down here, then AP invoice import. You could also import disbursements, meaning like paid items. So you'll pick your template. So all these templates are the same ones that you have set up in Explorer.
If you have any set up. You may not have any set up.
So right now you cannot create templates in Spire. It's coming soon. But if you need to, but any templates, again, that are set up, if they are in Explorer, will be over here automatically. If you do need to create a new one, just go into Explorer and it'll show up in here. But again, that's coming soon. So I'm going to pick the template I want to use, drag and drop the file that you want to import, or just manually pick it.
So for those of you that do this today, in Remote Edition, right, the Windows version that's hosted in the cloud, you're probably using WinSCP, or you're using some kind of file transfer program to like move files from your local directory up into that environment. None of that happens here. It's just it's just everything's pretty much, it's not technically local, but it all feels local. You're just working with local files, dropping them right into the system, and it's doing all that uploading behind the scenes automatically. Just file management in general is much easier.
And while it is importing, it feeds into this process manager, soon to be renamed to our notification center. That'll be in the next update. It's going to be called Notification Center, and it'll be a lot prettier and more functional as well. But for now, you can see your AP import is processing, and when it's done, you will get notified.
And as it processes, as long as it's in that sidebar that Jesse was just describing, you can do whatever you want. Like it's not, even if it takes 2 hours, like you can still keep working and do whatever you want. Most imports don't take 2 hours, but if you had a massive import, it just isn't going to stop you or slow you down And again, I'm stressing that concept now because it carries over to many other things within the system. Whereas in the past, maybe it would have taken over your machine. It doesn't do that anymore. We're trying to pass as much of that stuff to the background and then notify you when it's completed to let you run more efficiently.
And there's two more things that I have on my agenda, on my list. Just the AP end of month and then running reports. So under
Jesse,
the monthly...
I don't know if you reclassed a voucher. Did you reclass a voucher?
Oh, I didn't do that.
I
Let me
think
go back to
that's
that.
a good one, and I want to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah. Let me just find a paid item and then I'll reclass it. Reclass means maybe you used one GL account.
To the wrong expense account, right?
Right. Use the wrong GL account and you want to fix that. So just find the voucher that you want to fix. And let's enter reclass mode. So I'll click on reclass. Second. That is not one that I can reclass. Hold on. All right, so now I'm in reclass mode, and now we basically just go to where the GL accounts are and just change them. So I didn't want to use this account. I wanted to use a different one.
Very intuitive. It's not destroying the audit trail, guys. You know, for better or worse, you're going to still see that it was done improperly, but then you're going to see the correction through the books, which obviously is really what you want, right? You don't want to just make things sleep with the fishes like they never existed. You want to always have an audit trail. This will maintain that audit trail while at the same time making it super easy for somebody that may not even understand the concept of any of an audit trail or anything. The way I think that, my mind works at least is like, I made the mistake here. I want to go here. I want to click edit and I want to fix the mistake. And that's how we've designed this. And so it's just, there's really not a lot to think about, but then it will still maintain the audit trail, just process it, do everything that would have had to be done manually otherwise. You say that's right, Jesse?
Yeah. I said there were only two more things, but there's actually two more now, meaning there were three. So here's the other one, Rapid Pay. And I want you to just talk about Rapid Pay for a second, then I'll just show.
Yeah. So we'll go through it real quick. I know a lot of people here probably are using it or know what it is at least, but Rapid Pay is what allows it allows your users to scan invoices into the system. Our software will use optical character recognition to read the information off of those invoices and essentially create a voucher to be routed for approval. So it can go through a myriad of really totally custom user-definable workflows. You may need a board president to approve everything over $10,000 that then needs to go to the general manager and finally the property manager, or maybe certain things just fly right through. Whatever the case may be, once they become approved, they get fed right into the, as if somebody had manually entered the voucher, except that now you have a whole approval chain attached to it. You know exactly where it is if you are waiting on somebody to approve it, all those sorts of things. And of course, because it was scanned right up front, you're always going to have the image of it as well. So, yeah, Jesse, you can pick it up from there.
Okay, but yeah, eventually, everything gets approved. Well, if it does get approved, then it will end up in your Spire system, and from here, there's just this is the same flow as Explorer, basically, but there's just a final level of review, basically. Also, sometimes action to be taken, like somebody could have specified on the voucher, well, you're going to have to link this one to a legal case, so then it'll force you to do that here. I don't want to get into the details of everything with the Rapid Pay right now, because it could be detailed, but this is the Rapid Pay screen that's in Explorer is in Spire, and if you're using it now in Explorer, this pretty much goes with all the things that we've transferred over, like Adam was saying, but you'll definitely be able to make sense of it in Spire.
And I think it is actually a lot nicer and easier to use again for somebody that's never done this before. If you're seeing it for the first time, it's pretty intuitive.
Yeah. And then finally, just wrap it up with reports, which is really not, specific to AP. It's a generic concept of running reports, but you click on Run Reports, go to your AP folder, and you'll have all your different folders or all your different folders and reports. Anything that is in Explorer will automatically be here. And we'll just take a look at what it looks like to run a report. So you get your report pop-up screen, and just like in Explorer, you choose where you want it to go. This one happens to default to CSV. Maybe if that's how it's set up, that's what it'll do. And just pick the information that you want to run the report for and run the report. And if you have any templates or anything that are in Explorer, they're also over here. So I'll just quickly show you that. I don't know if I have any for here, but here I have 3 different templates I can pick from.
It all transfers from Explorer, and if it doesn't transfer from Explorer, we can teach you how to create these things because they are valuable, right? If you're running a report in a way that is not the default, and you find yourself constantly changing a couple of different filters every single time on, let's say, your income statement, you want it to run on an accrual basis every single time, and it defaults to cash. You don't have to struggle with that every single time. It can be set so that it defaults to that. Or if there's 12 different settings that you in particular use on your reports, you can set all those 12, save it as either the default or a very easily selectable option so that you don't have to do that every time. And maybe you forget one of the 12 settings and that you wind up with an inconsistent result and you're wondering why. It could be a big time saver and just good for efficiency and consistency.
And then final thing I'll talk about before I pass it back to you, Adam, is just any report can be scheduled. The way it works right now is that we would have to do it for you. You will have your own interface at some point, which will look just like this. But if you need reports, the same report run every night, every week, whatever it is, you could talk to us and we'll get it scheduled for you. And we also have an optional SharePoint integration as well. So maybe you want a bunch of reports sitting in a particular SharePoint folder every day for everyone to review. We could make that happen automatically.
Right. So what we're saying for those of you that are maybe not as familiar with that concept, right? If you are using SharePoint, which is right, that's where basically everything is online, right? You don't have any more directories locally on your local file server. Everything is just in SharePoint and OneDrive. That's what we can say. All right, every single night we want to run income statements for these 12 properties, and we want them to just be waiting there in the morning for when people come in instead of having to manually run those reports or even schedule them to be emailed to themselves. They could just be sitting in that directory in an automated way.
Right. All right. Well, unless there is any Q&A for me to answer, Adam, back to you.
Well, I'm sure there will be, but we've got.
No, I'm not leaving it.
Just going to take 4
saying,
minutes
yeah.
or less. And I'm going to go ahead and share, and we're going to wrap it up, and then we're going to just open it to Q&A. Whoops. Too many monitors. There we go. All right. So just real quick, I wanted to because we have so many, it's just such a logical topic to discuss when we have all these accounts payable minded folks on the phone. I think that there's still a lack of awareness around the ability to set your system up with the ability to make, I'm calling it e-payments in kind of a broad way, but what we're really talking about is completely, no matter what, completely offloading the requirement to have a check printer with check stock, with microtoner, with all, paying for postage, all that stuff, completely eliminating that from your office if you want to, or maybe partially eliminating it at the very least, right? So we have a processor that we work with that will basically facilitate all this. And I just want to kind of talk about the way that it works. So Jesse showed you the point at which, like, basically he brought it right up to the point where you're printing checks, and it had check batches to be printed. And it was living in that screen where it said print checks and e-payments, right? If you have e-payments turned on instead of printing checks, you would send those out to the processor, and then the processor is going to make a decision on how that payment can be made. And they're always trying to pay it in the way that is going to be least expensive or potentially even profitable to the property manager, right? So by default, all of your vendors are going to receive printed checks. So the processor has the ability to simply print and mail those checks on your behalf, right? So makes it a completely electronic process from your standpoint. So really where this became a really hot item was during COVID, when there was still like these physical aspects of doing the job, particularly right in the beginning when nobody wanted to go into the office. That changed pretty quick for a lot of us, but not for everybody. There was a physicality of printing, stuffing, mailing, dropping a check into the mail. That there was just no getting around that. But this gets around that, because even if the check needs to get printed and mailed, you can offload that to the provider. Now, this processor wants to pay it electronically, because it will cost you less, and then working up the chain. So there's really two types of electronic payments, right? There's virtual credit cards, which we'll talk about in a second, and then there's ACH, right? An ACH transaction costs like 55 cents. Printing and mailing a check, even from your own office, costs a lot more than that. I'll show you a little breakdown in a second. So even if let's say we were able to cut down half of your checks that are being printed and mailed and turn them into ACH, you're going to be ahead of the game no matter what, just from a pure cost standpoint, not even counting like the different efficiencies, right? So it's definitely more efficient to just send that out and not have to print, mail, stuff checks in your own office, right? There's no question about it. It's just more efficient. And then the other thing is that it's also more secure, because I can't think of anything that's less secure. And I almost on a weekly basis, at least, I hear about some sort of check fraud that affected a customer. You're sending your bank account information out into the universe, and those checks are being stolen. They're being deposited into fake accounts. All sorts of bad stuff is happening. By making the electronic either through ACH or by a virtual credit card, that takes that security risk out of the equation. And finally, really, there's a huge cost benefit, right? So again, printing and mailing is one option, but then ACH is the next option. And then finally, virtual credit card, which I think kind of scares people when I first say that. And it's like the initial reaction to that is typically, oh, my vendors won't accept a credit card. And we know that most of your vendors will not accept a credit card. However, some of them will. And this is really the name of the game, is that these processors, their whole business is calling vendors and working with them to find out if they will accept a virtual credit card. If not, will you accept an ACH payment? Okay. If not, no problem. We will print and mail a check for you. But for every virtual credit card that you're able to send out, the vendor, obviously, right? We know that the reason that most vendors don't accept credit cards is because they have to take a little bit of a haircut when they accept a credit card payment. But some of them are already set up to do this, and they want it. They're doing it. They're doing it for cash flow purposes. They're doing it for who cares why they're doing it, but they're doing it, right? And every time they do that, that little bit of a haircut that you're taking is going to get that the vendor is taking can get shared back with you, the property management company that's making the payment. So a lot of times what we're seeing is that these programs, when there's a full vendor enablement campaign going on with virtual credit cards being offered to the vendors, is that this whole program could be cost neutral. Like where literally you're outsourcing all your printing and mailing of checks. You're converting a lot of stuff to ACH, and the rest of it is all electronic too, because it's virtual credit card and you don't have to do anything to do it. So it turns it into a cost center to potentially even a profit center, because if your rebates on card are high enough, you'll actually get cash back from this process while making it more efficient and more secure. So this is something I believe strongly in, that like I really think everybody should be doing this, because it's sort of from my perspective at least, and I know there could be valid objections out there, but like sort of a no-brainer. Make your operation more secure, more efficient, and get a rebate for that process. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox, but I really do believe strongly in this. If anybody wants to talk about it more in detail, like we can actually run some payment analysis and, and just take a deeper dive into what it could look like for you. But it's the way of the future. There's not a lot of paper checks being sent out in Europe. We want to get away from paper, right? Everything should be going electronic, and it is going that way. And maybe this won't surprise many of you, but the property management industry tends to lag behind many other industries in the country and in the world. But this is the way of the future. So that said, I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and open it up to really a full question and answer session. So let's dive in and take a look. So yeah, hey, Wendy, Brian, Jesse, you guys are all welcome to grab these questions. And if you have answers, you've been looking at this list while I've been talking. Let's see. Do we have any outstanding questions that have come in? I know that there was some question about barcodes. Chara, you mentioned like that you're particularly interested in generating barcodes. I think Jesse was able to point that out, that you're able to manually generate a barcode that's related to a voucher, or you can even set it so that it will just automatically print a barcode label every time that a voucher is entered into the system. There is also a setting where barcode labels can print on check stubs if you are continuing to do that in-house in the office, and then you could actually use that barcode label on the check stub to scan all of the related vouchers all at the same time, and import them into the system like that. Now, that said, really all of that becomes moot if you're scanning vouchers through Rapid Pay, like up front and passing them around for approval, because then you really eliminate the need for barcode related vouchers at that point. Let's see, do we feel like usually we have, okay, now we've got some more questions that are coming in. Okay, that was just a clarification. Yeah, we're happy to follow up on barcodes, Chara. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to ask? We're happy to jump into as much detail as people would like to jump into. We had a good solid 15 minutes of questions at the end of our last webinar, but it looks like just a little bit of a quieter group, or maybe Jesse just did such a good job of explaining everything that there are no additional questions. Jesse's like, yeah. Okay, well, listen, I want to respect everybody's time, and thank you for hopping in here. We're going to be getting another one of these scheduled in a month from now, and please look out for that invitation. It's great having you all here, and for those of you that did attend, you will automatically receive an email with a link to the recording, and then we'll also be this gets edited down a little bit just for clarity and for it to be a little bit more concise, and they get posted up to our YouTube page. And there's we really have built a decent library of videos up there at this point, so anybody that is interested should take a look over there as well. But thank you all for your time, and hope to see you in the next session. Bye, everybody.